Hi, everyone, and welcome to The X, a podcast from inside Silicon Valley about how experience shapes everything, from products to services to entire businesses. I'm Brian McLean, and I'm here with Demetrius Madrigal. Today, we're going to talk about the experience of traditional retail and e-commerce, how COVID-19 has changed the landscape, and what we see happening in 2021 and beyond. Good morning, Dee. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Looking forward to this conversation. We've got a lot to say about retail.
I'm actually sitting here drinking some Kona coffee that I ordered directly online from Hawaii. And I have to say, we've come a long way since the old days when we used to beg friends to bring it back when they would go on their trips, right?
Oh yeah, like I get all of my coffee delivered now. Like it's shift things around. Sometimes I get it from Kona, and sometimes I get it from Kauai. Sometimes I get it from Costa Rica. Sometimes I get it from all these different kinds of places. And that's one of the great advantages is it's so easy to get online and just be like, I'm gonna try this out. And I don't have to make a major commitment. I don't have to look for something in the store. I'm just gonna try something out.
Yeah, I was in Hawaii a couple of years ago and I was in the Kona region. We went out to one of those coffee farms. It was amazing. So they gave us a tour and they showed us how everything is made. And then they brought us to the shop afterwards where we can, try all the coffees, purchase some, that kind of stuff. And one of the clerks was telling me was like, most people come and then they'll decide what type of coffee they like. He said, and then they'll hop on our little kiosk right here and they'll order it all and just click submit and then walk away and we'll ship everything back to their house so they can continue on with their vacation and just go and enjoy it. And when they get home, stuff will be waiting for them. I mean, that right there is a true customer experience. And I really think that's what we're going to see, moving forward as we grow
Yeah,
in this
absolutely.
space.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much room for improvement of the experience, both from a kind of brick and mortar in person retail experience to an online experience. And there's something that each approach has something to offer the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to take a minute to talk a little bit about what's going on with retail. I've been hearing a lot of people say, like, oh, I can't believe it. Like, online has grown so rapidly over the last year and it's just exploding and everything. And that's very true. It has. And I have numbers to back that up. But it's not just last year and COVID. I mean, this has been in the works since the late 1990s. I
Yeah,
mean, when Amazon first came out and eBay and all these others, I mean, they've been trying to streamline this online purchase experience ever since that.
yeah, and one of the things we've seen with COVID, and we talked about this previously, but a lot of the changes we're seeing are changes that were already in process, and COVID has just been kind of the accelerant. It's been pushing everything that was already going to happen, and it's just happening much faster.
But we're starting to see kind of an establishment of technology into almost every aspect of people's lives now. And this one in particular tends to be very powerful. So I want to talk about some statistics that I researched and pulled up for our listeners. So it looks like, based on the numbers that I've found, e-commerce sales in general increased by 32.4% in 2020. So that's quite a bit. I mean, that's huge considering that you might get somewhere around 10 to 12% growth in previous years.
Mhm.
Suddenly it jumps to 32.4%. And brick and mortar actually fell about 3.2%.
Yeah, I think that all makes sense, right? Because people are not going out to brick and mortar quite as much with COVID going on, and which means that they're getting a lot more shipped. They're going to e-commerce a lot more. There's another factor at play here, which is they're not spending as much money on certain activities like travel and trips and movies and concerts and things like that. So now that's freeing up capital that can go up directly into retail.
Yeah, and I also dug in and got you some numbers for your favorite experience, the curbside pickup.
Oh, I love
So,
curbside pickup.
yeah, I know. And so, 18% of consumers tried curbside pickup for the first time during the COVID-19 period. So that's a pretty big number. That's a lot of people testing out this service, and I suspect that a good percentage of them will actually stick with it.
Yeah, I mean, for someone like me, honestly, I feel like I'm pretty picky about experience, and people will hear it from me like, "Oh, this is the problem with that experience," and I'll tear some things apart. If I love it, then I think a lot of other people are probably having a similar reaction.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You have a very very specific
I have a high
criteria.
standard. That's
You
what
have a
I'll
high,
say. I have a high standard because I
yeah,
work in product design and stuff. I don't make a lot of. It's like, my partner's a chef. We go out to a restaurant. She's pretty critical of other restaurants because she knows the right way it should be done. So she feels like they should be doing that, and I feel like I'm the same way when it comes to product experiences.
absolutely, yeah. And on that same point of curbside pickup, because we always talk about how Target is doing a really good job at it. I was looking at their sales, and their sales surged 17% during the holiday season.
Yeah.
So considering it was like a really strange year with COVID and everything like that, it looks like they've done quite well or did quite well. The other thing I researched was Amazon, because that's the elephant in the room for delivery, and everyone keeps talking about it. So what we saw was the year over year sales growth in 2020 was 39.1%. Huge
Yeah.
amount of growth
Hmm.
in 2020 from Amazon. Now, the reason why I bring up all these statistics, and I think it's important to talk about them every once in a while, because I know that we try to focus mostly on the experience and what that looks like from a product standpoint, is that from a psychology point of view, when people engage in a new experience and you see like really large numbers like that, and it's a good experience, it usually shifts behavior. It usually sticks. Not
Hmm.
100%, not for everybody, but a large portion of the people who started doing online purchasing rather than in-store purchasing or trying out the curbside pickup, they will stick with this. And I think it's just going to keep going.
Yeah, I agree. I think there are certain things that we should kind of acknowledge, because it will help us kind of understand what's going on and what the future is going to be. And that's kind of how we got here. Like the rise of Amazon and other e-commerce was enabled by others who, I shouldn't say came before them, because Amazon's been around forever, but they broke the ground that Amazon benefited from. eBay is one of them, because it kind of became it kind of normalized e-commerce, and it part of that was because now you had regular consumers who were not just buying products, but they could make money by selling product online.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that kind of normalized the exchange that happened. And then you have Zappos who really figured out the returns process and made people feel very, very safe with buying a product online and knowing that if it doesn't work out, I can return it. And then the other one I'll point out is PayPal and Stripe and Square. A lot of these financial services companies who were able to provide very secure processing for your credit card purchases, so that everything that you purchase on Amazon or any other merchant out there is going to be secure. You're not going to have your credit card stolen. You're not going to have some weird fraud happen. So all of those things working together kind of like enabled where we are now.
Yeah. And I look at all those companies from a product perspective and I think to myself, oh, this is just getting easier and better and smoother.
Hmm.
And we're going to see adoption and use of online sales just skyrocket over the next decade.
Yeah,
Like
and
that's what I see when I see that stuff. If I look at good experiences and they're easy to use and they're
mhm.
making my life easier, all I see is it going north.
Yeah, and I feel like Amazon's not that they necessarily saw this coming, but they definitely had a vision that benefited from everything that's happened over the last year or two. And like their investments in Prime, in streaming video, in now streaming video games, in streamlining shipping and delivery, and even buying Whole Foods and investing in groceries. That all plays into this vision that anything that you want you can order online and get it at your home.
Yeah, and it seems like the people that are or the companies that are succeeding the most at this are the ones who they have their logistics really in line, right? So
Yes.
like pretty much any small company can start up and build a cool app and make it work and have it push and receive information and that kind of stuff. But it's all about that back end, right? It's all about the ability to have the logistics and the systems set up to ensure that customers are receiving their products on time. They're getting notifications. Salesforce does a really great job at this, is really helping out with getting your notifications, keeping up with your customer, circling back with your customer and figuring out what type of experience they had. If they didn't have a good experience, referring them to a customer service specialist. Like it gets extremely complex, but at the same time, the front end side of it is very simple and easy to use. And that is a big indicator. And I think people should take that into consideration, especially if you're thinking to yourself, like, what should I invest in the future? You should really think about the experiences that are emerging and really thriving in the moment right now.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
So, question for you: what would you say are the advantages to e-commerce? Like as kind of like a top level, and then what are the advantages to kind of the traditional in-person retail?
Yeah, I think this is an important topic because the traditional way of thinking about this is that e-commerce and brick and mortar traditional retail are kind of in competition with each other. And one of the things that I think is going to happen is that competition will kind of go away. And it's not to say that one of those different models will go away, but they're going to find a way to coexist and work off each other. And in a perfect world, what they'll do is they'll take the advantages, the positives of each one, and combine them so that there you get an overall better experience. So when it comes to e-commerce, the retail experience, because it's set up for you to find your own product by browsing only, it can become very frustrating, right? You're looking for something, you're in a Home Depot, you're in a clothing store, you're looking for something very specific. You're looking for a screw of a certain size, you're looking for clothing that you like in a certain size or shoes in a certain size, and who hasn't had the experience where looking for shoes, they see something they like and they have it in every size but their own size. That is kind of a frustration that can happen in a brick and mortar experience, but is much less likely to happen on an e-commerce experience. And that's because with e-commerce, because the logistics are so well worked out, you can search their inventory, you can sort the inventory. It's a much larger inventory, and you're not limited, much less likely, I should say, to be limited as far as access to it because you don't live in the right place. So you can much more quickly find what you're looking for and get it shipped to your house. Where if you're engaging in traditional retail, if you went shopping at the store and they don't have it, it could be, 20 minutes, an hour to drive to their competitor and hope that they might have it on the shelf.
Yeah, that makes a really good point. It also brings up this question in my mind. If you're going to start a company, what would be let's say you're selling a hardware product, right? Or a soft goods product. The big question you have to ask yourself is, what is the value to me having a retail presence? A long time ago, when I say a long time ago, I mean only 5 years ago, you would say to yourself, well, if I want something or if somebody wants something that I have and they want it in the moment, then having a retail presence would be great because then they could get in a car, jam over and pick it up from my store, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now that Amazon is moving to like 1-day delivery and in some cases like 8-hour delivery, then they're starting to squeeze out that reason for having a retail store.
Mm-hmm.
Then you think about other things, right? Like, oh, okay, well, people were going to want to browse. Well, if they're going to want to come and browse the product and then eventually purchase it online, then you're investing into this whole retail experience and the space and employees and all that kind of stuff. Does that browsing outweigh the cost of having the retail experience, right? So it's getting harder and harder for you to justify when a retail experience is necessary. Now you talk about like Home Depot, like building goods and stuff. Of course, people need to go pick that stuff up because they're in the middle of like building a house or something. But when you talk about things like, I don't know, what would be a good example of one recently that used to be around? But so there was like a card store, like where they sell like greeting cards and stuff like that near our house, and it recently shut down because people don't really buy greeting cards like that. They don't go to a specialty store and just look for greeting cards. Yes, a little bit, but you can go online and order these crazy pop-up cards. You can type in any funny quote and find a greeting card online and it'll ship it to you like probably within like a day or two.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of those experiences are starting to change. So I can understand if you rent it out of space because you want it to be a place where you can just ship and send orders. But to have it as a retail experience, it takes a lot of thought. And you'll see this, like I watch a lot of Shark Tank. I find it quite entertaining. You'll see it a lot when the sharks are investing. They're like, why would you have a retail space? Just stick with online, like double down on your advertising, like double down on your connection with your existing customers. like, don't go down the path of retail. It's very expensive. The margins are very thin. So you're already starting to hear it from investors as well, that they would prefer you to stick with the online experience.
Yeah, I mean, investors are coming through it from a very specific lens, right? They want to have a lightweight money machine that they can easily exit out of when the time comes, so that they can, make their cash in on their investment. There are reasons to have traditional retail, and you kind of have to ask yourself, for what I'm doing, does this make sense? So one of the things that you get from a traditional retail experience is that some of the questions that you get that come into your mind when you're ordering online, they can be answered in traditional retail. So you hear all these stories, there's a certain element of risk when you're buying something on Amazon. Are you going to get what you thought you were going to get? I saw somebody recently who's a big time streamer. He posted on Twitter a picture of, here's what I thought I was buying. And it's this like electric scooter that looks like it's going to, take him down to the grocery store and wheel around, a park and things like that. And then he shows the next picture is, here's what I got. It was like a toy. It was, it was this thing that was like, it was electric and it would run around, but it was like a hundreds of dollars on this little remote control scooter that would run around the house. You might be able to fit a guinea pig on it, right? So when you're in retail, you see what you're buying. When you're in a brick and mortar location, you see what you're buying, you know what you're getting. And you can really clarify a lot of, what is this? What's the build quality? Am I getting what I think I am? As there's plenty of instances in which I've looked at something and thought about buying it, but I've just been unsure, right? Because it still happens on Amazon, right? As we pointed out, is it going to have the right build quality? Is it going to last? Is it going to work for me? Is it going to fit in my space? All those kinds of questions are much easier to answer when you can see it, you can try it on, you can try it out, you can talk to someone and get all that information.
That part of it I agree with, but I think it's shrinking though. Like to some extent, I tried out the app experience. I don't know if it was on Amazon, maybe it was on eBay. It's where you select the product and then you lift up your phone and put it in your house, and then it uses augmented reality to like put the product in your house so you can see what it would look like and what it would feel like potentially. There's so much technology trying to tackle that one problem that you're describing right there,
It's
that I
true.
think eventually we'll get there.
Yeah, I think that there are people out there who are invested in it not happening. So in order for it to work, then all of the different merchants and vendors and producers have to get on board. So if that's available, but they don't enable it
Mhm.
because they're trying to basically like lightweight scam you. I had a friend who purchased during the heat waves of the last summer, purchased a small little, they called it like a blower box. It was like a personal air conditioner.
Uh-huh.
It took her 4 months for the product to even ship. And then when it showed up, it was this tiny little thing that was a glorified fan. It was just quite obvious because she had been going back and forth and communicating with the company and trying to get like support and like, when is this getting sent out? Can I cancel my order? And they were just very, very slow at communicating. And she eventually got her product and it wasn't what was promised to her. Um, and there are plenty of retailers and producers out there who are kind of invested in people taking the risk and like hoping that they're gonna be okay with over promising and under delivering.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there was this kind of quote that I was trying to piece together, not from someone else, but just like when you and I were talking the other day, which was like this idea that like if you don't lean into the future, if the companies aren't leaning into the futures, your consumers will do it for you.
Yes.
And what I kind of mean by that is you have to lean into online and do it right. But if you're not doing it right, they'll kind of do it for you. They'll go around you and they'll go find someone else, or they'll find a way to trick the system. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. The consumer's always right. And the way I'm looking at it right now and what I'm seeing is that there are very specific experiences where traditional retail is awesome. And you go in there and you get what you need and it makes a lot of sense. Like I love buying chocolate and things like that in person. I find it really cool to go in, you see them making it, and then you can, get a custom box and that kind of stuff. I like that experience, right? But
Yeah.
then there are certain things like socks that I already know what size I wear, and I find cool designs or whatever it is, I don't need to go in and sit down and try all those on, right? I can just order those and have them sent to my house. So as we're all figuring that out for ourselves, the challenging part is that the companies have to be able to adapt to all of the needs of their consumers,
Mhm.
right? Not just a retail, not just online, but also curbside, plus this, plus that. And I think that what COVID actually did in 2020, for the most part, was it took all of those experiences and it said, you have to get all these figured out or you may not survive, and
Yeah.
it put everybody at like 100 miles an hour on development and figuring out new ways to survive. And we even saw small retailers, not ones that have a big presence online, doing really cool and interesting things locally
Mhm.
to help ensure that you can still get the experience that you want or the products that you want.
Yes, and one of the things that when I'm evaluating how industries are going to go or companies are going to go in the future, one of the things I look at is there an economic incentive for that to happen, right? So if we're looking at people working from home, there's an economic incentive for any company that can let their employees work from home to allow them to do that, because now they can save all this money on renting and maintaining facilities.
Uh-huh.
Now, one of the things I've really enjoyed about in our time working with like e-commerce and retailers is there's always an economic incentive. So the changes happen and they happen relatively quickly, and they are somewhat invested in making those changes happen. So you look at some of the things that are going on now, and people are realizing that they can make money by taking some of the mom and pop shops and giving them an online presence and doing all that hard work for them, right?
Correct.
Doing that turnkey solution for them. And that, I think, is going to be some of the ways in which some ultimate competition for Amazon will show up, is just existing retailers figuring out how to be online as well as in person. And a lot of the improvements to the experience for both e-commerce and retail will continue to get accelerated, because just like Zappos enabled these consumers to buy products and feel like they're going to be able to return something, Shopify is now doing that same thing for brick and mortar retailers, as far as making it feel for them both possible and safe for them to also have an online presence.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful. And I really look forward to what the next couple of years are going to look like, because I feel like all those like mom and pop stores that we shop at locally, I'm starting to see their technology get upgraded and upgraded and upgraded. And I just hope, I don't know the details on this, but I just hope that with the implementation of that over time, I hope it doesn't kind of crush their margins too much. Because right now I know that a lot of these companies come in and say, "Oh yeah, we'll set this up and it's, very inexpensive. We should, small transaction fee, that kind of stuff." But I
Mhm.
hope over time it continues in that direction.
Yes, I think what they will need to do in order to really be successful. So the company that does this, I think, will ultimately, if they don't own the market, they will be establishing the precedent. But they will have to provide them both the tools and the education for how they make up for their margin, right? So by enabling online ordering and curbside pickup for a small local retailer, that Shopify or whoever it is going to take a cut, but that store should also be able to use that data to optimize their product offering, optimize their ordering. They should be able to minimize or offload some of their inventory management. They shouldn't have to spend as much money on maintaining a public face for the shopping area. There should be able to make up the margin in other ways, and the company that will help them do that while also putting them online will be the ones who kind of win the game.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, with that said, how do you see the future? Like,
Well,
what are your strong predictions for the next 5 years?
I think we're going to see a lot of the blending of online and brick and mortar. So I think you're going to see a lot of these online retailers, whether they're small or large, or whether they're chains or they're boutiques or one-offs. I think they're all going to have online presences. I think they're going to have a searchable inventory so you can see what they have, for quick pickup or for like a next day pickup or something like that, or ship to home. I think that basically the Amazon model will kind of proliferate through these other retailers, especially if they can all kind of pool their costs into a third party, right? So if we keep using Shopify as an example, they don't do this yet, but they very well could, where we can now get all of these local retailers onto the Shopify platform, and then we can sell the Shopify version of Prime where everybody gets same day or next day delivery through a Shopify Prime membership, right? So, and here are
Hmm.
all of our member merchants. So now you can order from, some around here we have Yamagami's nursery, right? So you want to get like let's say a Japanese maple, and you want it delivered to your house because you don't have the right vehicle to go pick it up. You can order it online. They're part of the Shopify network, and then because you have that Shopify membership, it just gets delivered to your house. And because they're all part of this same group, then it all the cost gets amortized. Those are some things that I expect. I expect the advantages are now all the inventories. You have better inventory management tools for the retailers. You have a searchable, sortable, up to date, more expanded inventory. Some of those advantages from e-commerce for the consumer, and they just know that they can get it. They can go check it out and take a look at it before they order it if they want to. Like you show up at the store, like at the Apple Store, the Microsoft Store back in the day.
Hmm.
You show up, you look at it, you try it out, then you place your order and it gets shipped to your house, right? Because they're not keeping a ton of inventory on hand. That showrooming experience, I think, will expand dramatically. So that Amazon, for example, on Target and Walmart, they will have partnerships with local retailers, especially Amazon, and Target and Walmart will do it through their own stores, which I kind of suspect might shrink in footprint over time.
Hmm.
But they're going to be like super showrooms where you go try out the product, whatever that happens to be. It could be, a laptop or a smartphone or a car or a type of food or something like that. And if you like it, you just order it there and it shows up at your house. So that combination of the two will, I think, honestly be the future. And it's going to be really interesting to see once the economy opens back up and COVID dies down. So there's so many use cases that are enabled by that. You're clothes shopping. You can search in ahead of time, find one or two items of clothing or three or four or five, have it set aside, and you can show up and try them on. And in the meantime, based on your size and your preference recommendations and your fashion choices, there can be an additional recommendations of like, hey, this might work for you too. You want to take a look at it while you're here. There's so
Hmm.
many different use cases that can be enabled in the future.
I've been thinking that maybe some of these stores like Walmart and Target that have these massive footprints will start doing more of these sub stores. You know
Mm-hmm.
how like you could drop in, let's say, remember the old Microsoft store, right? You could take the old Microsoft store and just put it in the middle of a Walmart.
Yes.
Like
And
actually just have all of their products there. So like people go to these large stores because there's an experience of like walking around and like seeing lots of things and kind of hanging out and that kind of stuff, right? So if you're dropping these sub stores in there and then your purchases are all done right there on a kiosk and then everything just gets sent to your house or they already know who you are because
mhm.
as you walk up your phone connects with it and stuff like that. I think you're going to see a lot of consolidation in that space. And you're going to
Yeah.
see real streamlined experiences. I mean, if I was making investments right now, I would be really thinking about these things. Like, what is Walmart going to do in the future? What is Amazon going to do in the future? What is Target going to do in the future? Stripe and Square and Instacart and all these people, they're all working together. Like everyone looks at them as like competitors and stuff, but they all kind of work together because it's that old saying, right? Like a rising tide, was it helps all ships or something,
Let's
you
all,
know,
yeah.
lifts all boats, right? And that's essentially what's happening here. And I think people should keep that in mind when they're thinking about what this future looks like. And I also think that curbside is gonna is here to stay. I love it, and I think a lot of other people love it as well.
I agree 100%. And I think that one of the things that we're going to see is kind of the rise of this logistical middleware for the combination of e-commerce and brick and mortar retail.
Yep.
And a company like Square or Stripe are a great example of it, where we recently took a trip to Tahoe just to drive around and come back. Stopped at this local store called Ikeda's, which I love, and they sell all these great hot sauces and all these different kind of specialty products. And anybody who makes that drive knows that store is there and has been there before. But let's say you're in Southern California, or you move to another part of the state or another part of the country, and you can't get there anymore. Well, now they have an online presence, or maybe you move overseas and you want something like that from a specialty store. You can now get it shipped because Stripe is opening up those markets to those small retailers, right? Because they're figuring out all the, let's say you're in Japan and they're figuring out all the local regulation for processing payments overseas in Japan,
Mhm.
and allowing Ikeda's to get online and sell to those markets.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that would be fantastic. And one of the other things you were mentioning to me the other day, I thought it was a really, really great idea that you came up with, which was the idea of shifting curbside pickup to becoming a drive-through pickup like fast food.
Oh
So
yeah.
modifying the stores so that when you make your purchase and you say, I'm here, you're basically just driving through, coming up to a window, and then they just hand the product to you and you drive off. I thought that was fantastic idea. Like, do you think that we might see that actually?
I think so. I mean, we're not that far off from it now, right? So if you go to Home Depot and you do the curbside pickup, they'll come out to your car and they'll just drop it in your trunk for you. You don't even have to get out of the car. So if you optimize kind of the space, and since you don't need to merchandise as much because you're doing so much of this pickup stuff, then you don't need to have easily accessible rows with all the signage. Most of it is being picked up by people who work there and put aside for people. Then it's pretty easy to use some of that space. I'm like, all right, well, as you're coming, let the merchant know that I'm on my way, and then when I show up, they're just like, all right, I'm here, and you drive right up, and they just drop it in your car, and you're on your way.
Yeah, the other thing and basically the final thing I wanted to chat with you about was this idea of making people feel safe to come into retail stores again. So I know that a lot of people are going in and they're wearing their masks, but there's always this conversation about like, oh, do I have something to wipe my hands down when touching the baskets and things like that? Do you think we're going to start seeing quite quickly new technology to help mitigate some of those feelings? Like I had this idea the other day. I thought, well, what if after you use the basket and you walk around and you pick some up from the grocery store, you put everything in your car, and then the people that are outside taking the baskets and bring them back in the store, they actually push them through like some box or whatever, and it has like the ultraviolet lights in there, and it just kind of cleans the whole thing as it moves through, so that that when you walk in the store, every cart that you grab or borrow is going to be one that's clean and safe.
I don't actually think that'll happen. I know that that is something that you would love. That speaks to you, and it's always kind of been something that you're interested in. But I think that what is going to happen when things start to open up again is that people are going to want to put that away. They're
Mm,
gonna want to get rid of those negative associations. Especially you think about people who lost someone, for example. It's just like
yeah.
I want to reject. They're going to want to reject some of those ceremonial behaviors that we've done, like washing our hands for whatever it is, like a
20
minute,
seconds. Yeah.
20 seconds. I feel like everybody did that for a few months, and then it kind of fell away, except for some of the most disciplined and dedicated, or unless you're in healthcare.
Yeah.
But and some of the knowledge around like how these things get transmitted changed also, right? It was less likely to do it through contaminated products. It was most likely to be if you're within speaking range of somebody for an extended period of time, right? I think there's going to be a kind of societal wide desire to kind of get back to some new normal. If it's not something medical, if it's not like it makes perfect sense at like a pharmacy, but I don't know that that's going to happen at like Disneyland, right?
Yeah,
Because
I
people
think
don't want
they're kind
to.
of the guiding light when it comes to this stuff. And I think you're right. Like in my mind, it's kind of like how do you mitigate the fear? And in your mind, what you're saying is people are going to be so exhausted by all the mitigation techniques of fear that once they get a vaccine, they're going to want to kind of feel normal again, not like they're at a hospital everywhere they go.
And to be honest, there's societal advantages when you don't have a deadly pandemic to people being exposed to normal bacteria and viruses. I mean, if
Yeah,
they aren't, then their immune system isn't prepared for it.
that's very true. And that's a whole other podcast right there.
The thing I want to talk about is that because there can be this logistical middleware to take care of things that maybe the actual vendor they can do a better job at managing those things than the vendor can. That means the vendor can focus on what they're good at, which is ideally going to be the knowledge of the product, right? So they can provide better service of matching up people with their fashion choices or grandparents with the right video game for their kids, all those kinds of things. And I think at some point there will also have to be some kind of online resource for, you imagine their grandmother looking for the right video game for those kids. That use case, since we, had Christmas happen recently, there might have to be a chatbot or some kind of online advisor, or maybe it's a person. Maybe they leverage like the kind of the YouTube model where you get an influencer in front of grandma. But there's going to have to be some kind of knowledge source because people are doing more of their actual ordering online. There's going to have to be some kind of some way for them to learn about the product more.
I agree. I mean, this was like the first year where last year, I should say, was the first time that I really used the wish list function on Amazon. And I didn't use it in the way that they kind of set it up. They had set it up as like my wish list, right? But what I was doing was going in and thinking of all the things that family and friends would like, and then I would add them all to my wish list, and then that way I can circle back later when it's time to place the order and relook at everything, and then I have a spreadsheet and stuff like that. It's definitely more complicated than just spending a day at the mall and walking around going like, oh, Demetrius really likes technology, so I'm going to go to the Apple store and look around and see what they have, or to the Microsoft store. It's just different, and I'm okay with that because me, I like it. I actually like the experience a lot. But I agree with you that there's going to be a lot of that probably arising in the near future.
Yeah, I've had the experience recently where, it's time for me to kind of refresh my laptop again. And obviously we're doing a lot more work in gaming and streaming and influencers. So it's like, let's get an actual gaming laptop this time. I'm not so worried about like what my laptop looks like if I'm taking it into some board meeting or something.
That's true. I would be really interesting if we walk into one of our board meetings and you have an Alienware laptop or something like that.
Well, I mean, at this point, if we're going to be going out and doing ethnography in some video game streamers' living room or in their home, then I'd rather pull out an MSI or an Alienware or something like that. It gives me a little bit of street cred with that person.
That's true.
Worry about like, all right, now I'm presenting in front of some Silicon Valley board members, and I have to have a MacBook so that they know that I'm part of the club.
That's true. I mean, we've had that debate forever about that, but
I know. But the reality is that that when I'm going back through, so I'm getting back to kind of the knowledge point I was making. I had to relearn a lot of the things that I used to know, right? Like, what's the difference between an RTX graphics card versus a GTX line of graphics cards, and what are the right hard drive formats to take? Why would I want an NVMe versus a SATA drive? There's so many different things to learn and know that I had to go through and spend some time and like, all right, well, let's look at Tom's Hardware and things like that in order to kind of refresh what I used to know. And not everybody's going to be able to really do that. They're not going to know where the resources are and who to trust in order to kind of get that knowledge if they're shopping for something like that.
Totally. And circling back to your to the podcast that we did on streaming, here we are again, back on YouTube, right? Trying to learn all about how to build computers again, since we haven't done it in a few years, and it all ties in together.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about retail and YouTube and Instagram and the influencers on there and Twitch.
Yep.
That's the new marketing. So those two play hand in hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think this is a wrap for today. This was really fun, kind of circling back, looking at the data, talking about what we think is going to happen in the future. And I want to thank everyone for listening. Our subscriber numbers keep going up. Please subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Tell a friend, share it. It's really helpful for us. Also, if you're a Kona coffee company and you would like to advertise on our platform, we welcome you. We love Kona coffee. So all right, everyone, you have a great week and we'll see you next week.